swine flu or West Nile virus to kill billions of people. Don't think for a minute they haven't tried to get World War III or, spray chemtrails in the sky that would kill us or any number of crazy things they've tried to do. The real people who benefit from that stuff is these Draco, because they are replenished by human misery and suffering and fear and pain and jealousy and anger and materialism. All the things that the earlier generation, pre-millennial generation, was taught to want from television and media. Grab for the gold, grab for the products, try to make as much as you can. Now you have a whole generation that's on the business end of that stick, and they're very angry. And they don't want anybody to make money, and when guys like Corey and me come out, invariably you see tons of comments from millennials saying, oh my God, they're making money. And so, look, we're not trying to feed the Loosh system. We're just dealing with a system in which we do have to have money to survive.
Of course.
We can't do what we're doing without it.
Well, it's an exchange of energy, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And that isn't by nature bad.
No.
It's just that we have been engineered to be in fear. If it bleeds, it leads. We're constantly being given new things to worry about. And this is reaching a breaking point. Alan, Stephen, both you guys, you're in one of the so-called PIGS countries, PIIGS,
yeah.
Portugal, So, look, it's already on the books in the European community and in America. When Greece goes down, which as of, an hour before we started this show, the Greeks have now said that they're going to pull out the banks. Nobody's going to be able to use the bank for at least the first day on Monday, possibly the whole coming week. Greece owes 1.6 billion euros, as you said, and just over the weekend, the Greek people have pulled out 1.3 billion euros from the banks, and they did such a bank run that only 40%, this is right off of Telegraph UK, only 40% of the cash machines in Greece had any money left in them after this weekend. So if you think this is all going to stay the same, nothing's ever going to change, this is building up to something. And there are laws on the books for the European community and America that once the banks start to go down, they can take your money right out of the bank and bail themselves out with it.
Yeah.
It's called reverse interest rate or bail-in or various things like that.
And
this is one of the things that Corey's insiders have told us a lot about.
Yeah, and that's on the Reuters news group. They've actually said that all the countries in Europe have to sign up to the bail-in agreement before the end of the month. And the Reuters reported, they're very blatant about it. And, they didn't hide it. They're telling us exactly what they're doing. Cyprus was one of the first countries as a template that was attacked for the bail-in. And obviously it's going to go around Europe because a lot of the banks are trading as insolvent anyway.
There's no money left in anything. The U.S. debt ceiling has been frozen, $25 million below the limit, for over 100 days. They're still spending money, but they're just not even reporting it anymore. They're just printing money out of nothing that they're not allowed to do. So it's a very serious situation.
Yeah, so this is a massive Ponzi scheme that's just going to collapse because the figures don't add up. And it has to collapse. I totally agree. It has to collapse. But what Corey said earlier on about the Western side of things had 100 years because of the Federal Reserve, and now the Eastern side want to have a go. So does that mean we're going to have a resurgence of a new financial system, but still based on the Babylonian money system?
Well, I don't think that's going to be allowed to happen. I think there are groups that want that, but there's a space program alliance, and that alliance is definitely going to get its voice heard. There is a whole effort being made here for a disclosure that is so big that Corey and I have been told, don't worry about the ridicule, don't worry about the hate. Right now our goal is not necessarily to prove what we're saying, it's just simply to get people ready for the massive emotional shock that they will have when this all starts to come out. And we are trying to take the edge off of that so that society doesn't have a much greater negative reaction as the things that we've been talking about are then suddenly widespread. Because apparently that is going to happen, and apparently one of the weird things that we know from one of Corey's meetings is the people of the Illuminati, calling themselves the Committee of 200, in one of the meetings that Corey had, they said, they were threatening Corey's life and my life, saying, we have kept you guys alive as a favor to you, but please don't disclose any more information until November, and then you're fine. Now, that indicates to me that they have plans in place to do their own form of disclosure sufficiently enough that as long as they could keep us quiet until November, it doesn't matter at that point, which is very interesting.
Okay. No, I totally agree. We've been told this before, that when the proverbial hits the fan and all this information comes out, that people who are light workers or starseeds will be there to kind of keep the calm, calm everybody down while they're running around like headless chickens. We'll be there saying, okay, look, calm down, this is what's really going on. And because it will be like, the information overload for people who are just in the matrix and don't get it will be just phenomenal. And maybe that's why there are certain starseeds around to compensate for that.
And I would also remind you to look back to history with the Snowden disclosures and realize that once those things were said and they became publicly known, anybody who had been talking about that before went from being ridiculed to being a hero. And all of a sudden, the media now has all this stuff that they can go back to and say, look, this guy whistleblew on the NSA, this guy told us what was going on, this guy wrote a book about it, this guy came forward, he told us this was going on. It's going to be the same thing when we get cosmic disclosure, when we get the space disclosure and extraterrestrials and all that. You're going to go back and you're going to say, look at this guy, wow, he was actually telling us the truth all along.
So
that's apparently what we're heading into.
So you reckon, but if they said that to you by November, to stay quiet till November, and obviously it's going to look good if they do it, because if the ETs come and do it, because if the cabal don't do it, then it's going to look bad for them. So they're obviously putting the plans in place to have a disclosure, and then they'll come out and say, well, we were going to tell you about this anyway, we were just getting things organised.
Yeah, they're apparently trying to put. Yeah, they're trying to put together some sort of controlled narrative disclosure to where they can hide their crimes against humanity, but give just enough information which would, just announcing that we're not alone and, there's possibly a secret space program, and some of that information alone would be enough to blow society up for a while. Yeah. And they would be able to try to bury their crimes against humanity and stretch it out as long as they could. And another thing that came about in their meeting was that they said that for the sake of the poor people who couldn't handle it, they wanted to bury a lot of these crimes for another 50 years.
Well, what happens is when you actually pull over the curtain, it's a famous quote I heard by a good friend of mine who's sitting about 5 feet away from me. When you pull open the curtain and have a peek and you see what's behind it, you want to pull it open further.
Exactly.
And I think
can't just peek into Pandora's box. Once you crack it open, it all flies out.
That's it, and I think that's what will happen. I'm just conscious of time, guys, and I want Steve has a few more questions for you, so we'll go over to the questions there.
I was going to see if I can take a question, and then David can take a question, because I don't know how you say it there. I need to run to the little lads' room.
Okay, no problem. Do you want to go now, Corey, and then we'll pass the question off to David first?
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll be right back.
Okay. We'll throw this one over for Dave. Dave, this one has just come in online recently, and it said, seeing that the Draco lives off of negative energy such as anger and hate, what would happen if we, the people, were to send out love and positive thoughts? What would that do to the Dracos?
If this is something that I heard from a guy who worked for the Rothschilds, which is the top human group in the Illuminati, the top family of the 13 bloodlines. I call him Jacob. There's a few people I have who gave me extensive information about the space program. At least 90% of it I withheld from the internet. Corey comes along, and we start talking about all this stuff that I've never made public. And I stopped counting around 50 or 60 times where he said something I'd already heard that I'd never published, or he finishes a sentence before I finish it. It was unbelievable. So Jacob is one of the top space program people I know. I learned a tremendous amount from him. And he was still working for them and not entirely, he still kind of bought into their agenda to some degree. But he really did not like the Draco. And he told me that one of the greatest secrets of the Draco is that if enough people on Earth felt happy and laughter actually, for one day, that one day of enough people on Earth smiling, happy, and laughing would literally defeat the Draco on the spot. They would die if they had that loose supply cut off for one day. So all we need is one event. And go back to Live 8, which people in Europe probably remember that a lot better than Americans do. You guys had this great event where all the great 60s, 70s, and 80s rock stars all came together to end world hunger and defeat poverty and environmental destruction. And then guess what happens? All that momentum to change the world was completely deflated. I think it was 4 or 5 days later by the 7/7 London tube bombings. All of a sudden, oh my gosh, I've been to London. I've ridden the tube myself. It's a great thing to have. It gets you through the city beautifully. Everybody uses it. Then you have terrorists blowing up the tube. It took all that energy, all that love, all that potential for us to really have momentum, and it puts everybody into the English 9/11.
Yeah.
So the war is very real, but if we get a positive event, that's it. They're done. And that seems to be, this is an interesting thing, is that solar energy flash, that sort of energetic change that we go through, it's not just something that takes place on a specific day. It seems to be a direct byproduct of what is called in the law of one, the moment that humans reach what they call social memory. And that's where enough of us feel positive that the compartmentalization of the mind breaks down and we become telepathic again. And it happens apparently quite suddenly.
Yeah, but unfortunately, like from what we see over here, and I'm guessing you guys see it over there too, that there is so many things happening on a daily basis that even I believe if Live Aid were to happen again, I don't think it would have the same effect that it did when it happened in 1985, because back in 1985, like, things were a lot different. You look at today, and there's so many people immersed in debt. People, suffering foreclosures. There's so many people suffering austerity, and for those who aren't suffering austerity or awaiting a foreclosure, they're probably one of the many who are stuck in the whole mindset of reality TV. Because there's so many TV channels over, across the world, just churning out BS, day after day, and 24 hours a day. So, even if Live Aid were to happen or something of that magnitude, I'd say probably half the planet wouldn't get it anyway. They probably wouldn't be interested, unfortunately, because I actually remember that day back in 1985, and I wasn't at the concert. In fact, I was working on the day, but on the way home, I had listened to some of it on radio, and it was electric. It really, really was. And I just say, if something like that magnitude could happen again, it would be fantastic. It really would. If that's what it would take to get rid of these Dracos, negative energies, it would be amazing. But then again, as you just said, David, that within a couple of days of that happening, Live Aid, then we had the 7/7 bombing. So whatever good could have been done from that was marred by this. I'm not going to say a terrorist attack. Well, I suppose it is a terrorist attack, but not by terrorists. I think it was government orientated, personally speaking.
Well, just imagine a tribunal where the real people who have been pulling the strings in what Corey's folks call the secret Earth government are actually arrested, and then their crimes are actually revealed to us, as ugly and as dirty as that is. This has been hiding in the background of everybody's mind. I had nuclear war drills when I was in school where we had to get under our desk